Yeah, I appreciate that.
Here's your
You're
timer.
gonna time me. That's
Here's your
good.
timer. Just so you
Wow.
know, that's where it's at.
9 minutes and counting. My name's Jeffrey. I'm an alcoholic. Didn't Andrew do a good job? I gave him one instruction: make me look good, not old man on a walker. It is true. I remember those days in Fremont. I lived in the crack house. Literally, at the end of the hall, there was crack being sold in this end and heroin being sold in that end, and God in between in the middle. It was they used to read in the book the most sordid in the meeting, the most sordid place on earth, and they'd yell out, "Jeffrey's house!" But after a couple of years, they changed the name to the launching pad. Because I was launching souls out of there like it was no tomorrow. They'd be waiting in the door, waiting down the hall. That was a fun time. But I am an alcoholic. But I got this allergy for alcoholics. I mean, ever since I got in this room, my eyes have been watering. So if they start watering, just know that I've had this little allergic reaction to alcoholics. But I am an alcoholic, and I'm living in long-term sobriety. I've been sober since my first meeting on February 29th, 1988, until this one tonight. I know, so if you are new, let me be the guy that tells you. You can come to Alcoholics Anonymous, find a home group, get a sponsor, have a spiritual awakening as a result of working our 12-step program, as it's outlined in the book, and help other people. And there's a good chance you won't drink again either. And I see this happening over and over and over again, either whether it's for the first time or after. It really doesn't matter to me. This is my new motto. We can start from where we are. And it's okay. Doesn't matter what you got going on. We can start from where you are, walk together, unite under this, have unity and get well, as it was said here. I was going to tell you my drunk log, but it's so much like Andrew's. Andrew, I'm just like you, or I should say, you're just like me. I started drinking when I was 10, and it wasn't a problem until I was 11. But I was a teenage alcoholic. It was so long ago. I only remember I was drunk a few times, but 2 I remember. Once for 9 years and once for 7. And I barely drew a sober breath. But I remember, alcohol also gave me that false sense of security that I needed when I was in middle school, growing through adolescence. And it worked for me. By 8th grade, I was the president of my class. By 9th grade, I had it going on, and high school, forget about it. This was the best time ever. My brother was a senior. He turned 18, got his own house, and we had all the keg parties going on at his house. And it was the 70s. By the time I was 18 years old, I had fake ID. I was hanging out with my older brother's friends at the back 40. Robert Cray was the house band. It was amazing. You can't write stories about the things that we were doing while drinking. And there were many of them. And since I only have 25 minutes and 54 seconds, I'm not going to go into all of them. But like most things, alcohol, you start to lose things and lose your keys, lose your car, lose your house, job, girlfriends, all of it the same. Drunk. I mean, and I'm not going to go into my drug use because I want to stay on the signalness of purpose, but my experience was like our co-founders. I was using drugs, and like Andrew's, now that I think about it, to control alcoholism. And if you take as much drugs as I do to control alcoholism, you will become a drug addict too. But in the end, it's just drunk. And I got sober on a day I didn't plan to. Obviously, my plan was to quit drinking on New Year's Day, and I showed up on February 29th, 1988, which is leap year, by the way. I've had 8 birthdays here, little over 8. But you know, it's really it's really amazing to me, because when I look back on all the different stuff. But I came to at Lakeside. It wasn't Lakeside Milan then. It was just Milan. It was out on the seminary in Juanita, and they put me on the short bus and they brought me to you. And it was the Wedgwood Men's Stag, and I walked up on the door. I'll fall apart telling the story. I will. Thank you for the pause. I needed that. Always comes through for me. When I was walking up to the door, the first man I met in Alcoholics Anonymous is in this room. And he welcomed me. I don't remember much about the meeting. It reminded me of the Elks Club, a bunch of men. You know, but I did go back to the counselor, and he said, How was your first meeting? I said, well, I don't really know what they were talking about, but I did feel welcome there. I'd like to go back. So he made arrangements for me to get back there. And then when I got back that following week, Michael remembered me, and he said, how you doing? I said, not good. Not good at all, man. I'm little over 3 weeks in a 28-day program. I feel worse than when I got there. And I never understood that, because I always had this idea, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room that thought that if I wasn't drinking, I'd feel better. Anybody? I mean, I had trouble with my drinking. I thought it was mine, you know. But, you know, so I went to the meeting and told Michael I wasn't doing good. He passed a note to the secretary, chairperson, call on Jeffrey, and they called on me, and I said, hey, man, I don't get it. I'm worse than ever. I feel terrible. I'm depressed. I want to drink more than ever. I don't want to. I want to drink. And, you know, I'm getting out in a few days, and I'm going to drink if something doesn't happen. And the next person who shared was somebody that connects me to this meeting here. As a matter of fact, connected to the Seattle One group. Next person to talk to me was Dugout Doug. Remember that crazy guy?
Yes.
In fact, he was one of the founding members of the Seattle group. He's in the picture there. He was in the 12-stepper band. When I had met him, he was 92 years old. And he said, Rule 62, kid, don't be too hard on yourself. It could be worse. You could be like me. I'm 92. I don't even buy green bananas. I'm like, what? He says, yeah, I was at the doctor today, and they asked me for a urine sample and a stool sample. I just gave them my underwear. And I heard the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was, laughter is the language of love. And I felt better when I left. And at the end of that meeting, Michael introduced me to the man that would become my sponsor. In fact, both him and I shared him as a sponsor for, I don't know, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's still my sponsor, but he hasn't been in this town for 30 years, maybe more. But he was put on, he was sent here by a friend of one of Michael's friends, who turned out to be one of my bartenders. If you drank in Pioneer Square in the late 70s and were going to Fat Tuesday, you couldn't help but make it into the J&M Cafe. Been kicked out of there a few times. I've been kicked out of a few bars. In fact, I have a brother who looks a lot like me, and they had a picture of us on the cash register. Do not serve these two under any circumstances. But he asked me if he could meet with me and tell me his story, and then he did, and then I told him mine, that like I had told you guys. And he said, well, you know, he went to the title page of the book, and he said, you know, this is the story of 1,000 men and women who've recovered from alcoholism. You can recover from this. And if you want to be recovered, all you got to do is do what I do, and you can have what I got. And I've been using that same line to everybody that I talk to along the way. I don't. I only say what was done to me. And he said that we were going to put together a group of people. And we were going to start a golden slipper workshop in Seattle. And we're like, what's that? He says, well, you're going to have a unique experience. You're going to have an experience with me, but then you're going to have an experience with a group of people. And it's going to be a great time. And so we started gathering the group. And, it didn't matter to him where we were like going to, we'd like go to Thunderbird. He goes, I love this treatment center called Thunderbird. Have you ever been there? I said, no. And we'd go out to Thunderbird and we'd go get ready to go into the meeting to talk to me. He goes, wait, we got to pray first. Okay, Lord, give us some good jokes when we get in there, And it was all about laughter. And that guy, even to this day, is the craziest man I've ever met. By far, certifiably crazy. I mean, like rubber room crazy. But also, he's the happiest guy I've ever known, And he's always been there. And through all these years, he stays in touch. But, he got involved in this church and he moved to Florida. And but first, before that happened, we did that workshop. And we were at the Fremont Baptist Church, and that place lit on fire. I started a meeting called Drunks Are Us. It was an old meeting there, and we met there on Monday night. And then in 1990, the World Conference, Alcoholics Anonymous, came to Seattle. And Emmett says to me, hey man, we got to have a meeting for my sponsor and your grant sponsor for a place for them to talk. So we talked to the church. We arranged for the church to be open for us to have a meeting there, and my sponsor came a week early. His name was Joe Hawk. He's a AA icon. He's been passed for several years now, but we went out and we did a week before the conference started. We did a workshop on the steps, and then we went to, and then the Thursday before that, the conference, I met Don P. And Don P. was our closing speaker at the International. He was our great grant sponsor, and he took me aside and he said, he's gonna when they heard that he was going to be there at that church, 700 people showed up there. It was a wild meeting, and they had to put speakers out on the lawn, and the place was full in the basement and up the alley and out on the courtyard. They had speakers, and he spoke about when he was at the International in '75 that a group came to him, which was called the Golden Slippers, and they were from Canada, and they worked the steps together in a group, and he was talking to us about our group, and we had, next thing you know, we have like 5 groups of going in the Fremont Baptist Church, and hundreds of people's lives are starting to change, and it was an experience that that was an incredible experience that I'll never forget, because it got me what I understood about Alcoholics Anonymous, because we were doing these workshops in the Fremont Baptist Church, but around AA, we were a cult. We were crazy people doing steps in a group. Watch out for those guys at the Fremont Baptist Church. And then when Don came and they seen, this is all grounded in old history of AA, then it was a different story. And they started sending all the worst people in Seattle they could find to our group, and we would just, same thing. Hey, we do what we do. You can have what we got. And we started doing those workshops down there, and then we started doing retreat after retreat, and it was pretty amazing. It was an amazing experience for us, and about like 10, 12 years into that, I got into business and had an opportunity to go to China, and so I spent a few years in China working with people in China, and then I ended up in Phoenix, and then from Phoenix to California, and California to Texas, and in between that, I ended up getting married, and so that would be in 2000. Now I'm up in 2004. So I'm like 20 years. I'm going to be 20 years sober, and I'm in Texas working for this import company, and I'm designing for a catalog company in Marshall, Texas. Which, if you go from Dallas to Marshall, Texas, you'll get on the 20. You go as far east as you can, and just before you get to Louisiana is Marshall, Texas. Marshall, Texas has a couple people who live there. One is George Foreman, and his daughter Georgie Foreman, and his son George 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it's in the piney woods, and it's as East Texas as it gets, And but by then I'm in Texas, and I'm going crazy. And one thing I can tell you about long-term sobriety is that it doesn't matter where you are or what you go through. There's different cycles of time and different seasons for everything. And I was married and I was separate, and I thought, well, I need to go to this meeting. I need to go to a meeting. So I went to this meeting. It was in Marshall, Texas at their Alano Club, and I got there a little early, and this guy is inside there, and he's throwing big books into the box, and he's cussing out, and I'm kind of at the door going, wow, I don't know whether I should go in here or not, and he's swearing, and so I kind of peeked in there, and I said, hey, is there a meeting tonight? Is there a meeting tonight? Yeah, sure, there's a meeting tonight. Here's the keys. You're the meeting tonight. And I'm like, okay. And he says, I'm done with this meeting. I'm going. I said, well, what the heck's wrong with you? And he said, man, I do the 6 o'clock. I do the 12 o'clock. And now nobody's here at Monday. I said, hey, look, I can do the Monday night. I'm in Monday night in Texas all the time. And he says to me, he said, well, I've been sober. I've been sober a long time. I said, okay, that's fine. I get sober on leap year, so I only count every 4 years. So, I said, well, I got 5 years. And he says, well, I got 20 years. I got sober on March 1st, 1988. And I'm thinking to myself, I got a day on him. And so I told him that story, and he goes, well, you know what? I got sober on February 29th, too. Except I always say March 1st because it only comes once every 4 years. And I said, isn't that amazing? And then this other guy comes in the meeting. He was an old guy named Old John, and he heard that story. He just starts laughing. He goes, ha, 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 now we got the twins. We got twins in AA. And he says, can you imagine, this old guy, he was in his 90s, he says, can you imagine the sense of humor God has? That he would get two guys sober in different parts of the country, one a Yankee and one a rebel, and put them together 20 years later on the day they need each other, and he's laughing. I'm thinking, wow, yeah, that's a sense of humor. So we celebrated our birthday, and the meeting went on. I went to that meeting for 4 years while I was down there, and back and forth. I lived in Dallas. I'd drive to Marshall on Monday, and then I'd come back Wednesday night back home. And it was an incredible experience for me to go to work steps with that guy. He did two things. He worked steps, and he taught people GED. So he used to take me over to the Salvation Army there where he taught GED. He'd do a meeting, and then he'd get the guys and teach them GED, get them through their GED classes so that they could get jobs. I'm like, that's cool, Mike, really, and him and I still call each other up every time on our birthday and laugh about it. And then I was living in Texas. My wife and I were going. My wife and I have decided that we're going to move back to Texas. We've separated in the same house because it's like 2008 now, or 2008. The economy's gone in the tanks. I'm working 3 jobs to keep the mortgage going while we can sell the house, and we've decided to move back from Texas. And I'm not going crazy, but I'm not attending AA as much as I should. But, I am going to, my son, I've been going to my sons in the Boy Scouts, and we're leading, and I thought, well, hey, I'm leading boys to God and country. That's about as good as it gets. So, and you end up separated. your spirit ends up separated at different times. So I called Gary Brown, who is was Don Prince's sponsor. He's still alive. We went through the mechanics of the steps, and then he told me to write inventory. And then he said to me, "Hey, when you get back, I want you to do a multi-fifth step, and when you get back to town." So I got back so we got back to from Dallas to Washington. I was staying in Tacoma with my brother. And so when I got into town today, I got back in town, I read my inventory to Michael, I read my inventory to Steve, I read my inventory to Alvinsky, and I read my inventory to Romina, because I was going through a divorce. I wanted to have a woman's point of view of where I'm at. And I finished all my amends and started coming back from all of that. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, man, I'm living with my brother. He's driving me crazy. And I'm thinking, man, I need to move to, and I'm working in Seattle as a courier from the company that I was doing a job hustle on in Texas. And it was just a part-time job in Texas. They had a full-time job in Dallas. So I'm doing this courier business, and I'm driving back and forth to the airport every day through 5. I want to put a gun to my head. And I'm thinking, I need to move close to the airport. So I started, since I'm on the walker, Andrew, started looking, thought, well, I'll just move into Shag. That looks like a pretty cool place to me, watching on TV. So, I go look to apply for a place, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, no, I'm not ready for this. I started thinking about where I'm going to live, and it's been my experience, that there are ups and downs and all through sobriety, but if you have a conscious contact with God, and the thing about when I say conscious contact, it isn't like I have faith. I have actual access to a relationship with a God of my understanding that just has never not been there for me. And I thought and the thought of Oxford came into my mind, and I'm thinking, Oxford, man, why would I think that? I'm not in new sobriety, but I thought, hey, I'm going to follow through on this. So I follow through on the call, and I say, hey, I'm in long-term sobriety. I don't know about Oxford, but I am looking for a place to stay. I've got a job, and I'm an old guy, and just there's no drama. And the guy says, please come over and fill out an application. I'm like, okay. So I go out and fill out, and I just walk in the house and talk. They're sitting around the table. They do an interview. Say, yeah, you can move in tomorrow. I'm like, well, I don't know about tomorrow, it's the 4th of July weekend. But yeah, okay, I'll do that. And so I moved in there 3 years ago. And I'm thinking, well, and then all of a sudden, these new people start coming through, and I'm able to be of service to them. And then I talk to House and what we should be doing? We should be doing a back to basic workshop at least every 90 days with the new guys coming in, and I'm doing this and that. And I become the housing representative for the chapter, and I'm sponsoring guys. And Pasadena is 4 blocks from my house, so I start going there and taking guys through the back room, and I'm thinking, hey man, I'm getting some traction now. And here's the thing: you can't transmit something you ain't got. And there's periods of time in my sobriety where, hey, I've been able to do it and I've not been able to do it. The mechanics of it, it's like, it's not that I don't know how you get into those places of emptiness. Alcoholism has a tendency to isolate you, even in sobriety. And I've been in it a couple times where I've actually been too sober to ask somebody to help me, and then not enough sober to ask somebody to help me. But I have solid friends here in Alcoholics Anonymous that just started. I was able to talk to about it, and then every once a week they do a urine and out, and you have to do a UA, random UA, to see if somebody's drinking in the house, and I came up positive, and I'm thinking, how the heck did that happen? And I'm like, how do I come up positive? And I'm sitting there, and they're telling me, yeah, you came up positive. I'm sitting there, how do I come up positive? I'm looking at, looking at the mouthwash, and I don't know what the heck happened, but I'm telling you guys, I'm not drinking. And as I'm talking to this, it dawns on me if you have a positive UA, you only have 30 minutes and you have to move out. So I'm like, oh man, I got to move out. And they're like, yeah, we're sorry, bro. You got to move out. We don't think you were drinking either, but those are the rules. And so I called Steven, and of course, he laughs at me. Yeah, come on over. I'm like, and so I stayed with him one night and made arrangements to get my stuff. And I called him the next day. Hey, I got a storage unit, and I'm gonna come pick up this stuff. I said, well, wait. Maybe you should wait and listen to what we have to say. And I was like, okay, well, what's going on? They said, you may have high glucose. You might be diabetic and don't even know it. If you go get your blood tested and you come up that you have high glucose. And so what had happened was because I'm careless, because I'm not worried about it doing a UA. I was careless and I contaminated the urine. And because of my high glucose, it showed up as alcohol. And that's what happened. And so when I went to the doctor, I was like off the charts, about ready to have a seizure. They had to put me on IVs and hydrate me. And so, isn't that amazing?
Higher power, eh?
Huh?
Higher power, eh?
Is that right or what, man?
Yeah.
So, I go to the doctor. They get me started on insulin and how to back out of diabetes. And, I was going to wear a different suit, but I couldn't even button it up. I'm like, you got to do something about your exercise and lose some weight. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, and then they, and when they were testing my blood, because I was going to the doctor regularly, they were testing my blood. And they found out that I had hepatitis C from when I was using heroin before I got sober. I didn't even know that I had hepatitis C because I'd never been tested for it, because I'd always worked as an entrepreneur. I had my own art company. I only go to the doctor when I'm sick, and they don't test it out, and it's real common. So if you haven't had that test, it's a good thing to have that test. So they put me on Epsclusa, which is a pill that is for Hep C, and it took 90 days, and I just completed that pill last week. So it's like, I have no idea what God has in store for me. I can sit up here and think, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And this is why I'm doing it. But in the last, I would say, and I'm kind of scared of this, because I did the last time I talked to Don P. You guys may know him as Papa Don P. I know him as Papa Don, but he was telling me about, you're a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous. You're going to find some dark, empty spots. It's called the dark night of the soul, and you just have to understand that you're going to be okay. And are you sure? And he'd say, yeah, you're going to get to the good stuff, and you're going to run out of time. And I'm thinking, I was talking to Stephen today. I said, man, we're seeing things. We're so excited about Alcoholics Anonymous now. Because of all the work that I've been doing, I'm back online with helping people. And if you're helping somebody, because they're getting some results, right? And Andrew would say, hey, well, I tell him, you're helping me more than you're helping me way more than I'm helping you. So, I'm down there at Pasadena, and I wanted to thank my guys here, because they're from the Union Gospel Mission. I told the Union Gospel Mission started coming to my group, and I said, hey, if you guys can get a bus together. So I started Fonzier and Javier here, and I said, you get a bus of guys together, I'll take you in the back room and take you all through the steps at the same time in the Golden Slipper workshop. So we did. We got the bus together for the first time last week, and we opened the book to the title page, and we just started. And so who knows what God has for us in mind? But I do want to express, as I look out into the rooms, that I can see that because I can tell when God touches my heart, because I get that allergy and my eyes start watering, and that happened in the room tonight. So I wanted to thank you guys, everyone, for coming and listening to me share, and Lara for having, Nancy and Lara for inviting me to come, and Andrew for what you did. And thank you guys. That's it.